gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. I hope this song could help change your mind.
America, that woman stood at a city council meeting and sang a song to stop 200 people from being moved out of a tent city. Here's the situation. Not one of those people clapping for that performance offered to take a single one of those 200 people into their own guest house. Not a one of them. They'll sing carols and songs to the cameras, but they just won't open the front door. Because what St. Paul is actually planning to do with that land is going to make the singing look a lot worse.
Right now, St. Paul city workers are clearing the city's largest homeless encampment.
The move met with some protest today, with activists asking, where will the people living in these encampments go?
The footprint of the Pig's Eye Park encampment, a fraction of what it once was. At one point, around 200 people experiencing homelessness lived here, just southeast of downtown St. Paul.
What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. You guys, it hits over 100 degrees out here in Nevada in the summertime, and I've watched the city struggle with the exact same question that St. Paul is fighting over right now. What do you do with a couple hundred people living outside? Pig Eyes Park in St. Paul, Minnesota. 200 people living out there before the city moved in and provided trucks to clear out that encampment.
But two of the largest, Catholic Charities and Union Gospel Mission Twin Cities, operate at 99% and 88% capacity, respectively.
The two biggest shelters in town were already sitting at 99% and 88% full before anybody started clearing out these encampments. And you guys, here's the part that most people watching the news that night never even got told.
24 beds at the Union Gospel Mission in St. Paul are empty on Wednesday night.
We have capacity right now.
24 empty beds sat empty at that exact same shelter that same night that the city was telling reporters that there wasn't enough room.
Unfortunately, all we did was clear out Pig's Eye and move them to various other encampments throughout the Twin Cities.
A volunteer here said the quiet part out loud on camera. All the sweeps did was they moved those 200 people simply just down the street to another location in a different park. Now, here's the part, you guys, that makes me a little bit angry. It's not the tent city situation. It's the homeless industrial complex sitting on top of all of this. There's a real difference between somebody who's working a job right now, driving a shift every single day that just simply can't scrape enough money together, whether that's the first and last month rent, because the rent in their city keeps climbing and climbing. That person obviously deserves every ounce of help that the city can throw at them or provide them. Then there is a whole separate group of people who actually learned how to game the shelter system, how to get free food, a free cot, with zero intention of following any single guideline or rule, just to get the things that they need and then go back on the street. Because right now, nobody's forcing that distinction between the matter. The shelters treat both of them the exact same. The honest ones end up with the crumbs, if you would, that are left behind by the ones that are gaming the system.
You know, that's a director of the Wilder Foundation is a close relative to the mayor. And that support, their information does not give any support to this clearing of this camp.
A testifier stood up and said the director of the exact nonprofit providing the city's own homeless data is closely related to the mayor. This is the homeless industrial complex as a whole. The people writing the numbers and the people making the decisions are sitting at the same dinner table together.
I've been working in my field for about 5 years now. And last year, they cut the funding and stopped allowing chemical dependency treatment centers to provide beds to individuals coming out of the encampments to get substance use and co-occurring mental health help, right? And now we're sitting here a year later wondering how we got to this point and why there's so many people in these encampments when it was the state's decision to remove. We went from almost 10,000 beds down to 1,400. 10,000 that were being paid for people to get the help that they needed, right? Down to 1,400 that are non-existent.
This happened the exact same year that the camp exploded in size. Nobody here wants to connect the two dots at the podium, but the math does the math in itself here, you guys. Now, you know, we got to follow the money because the land underneath the tents is worth more than empty than it was full of tents and people.
And St. Paul has said they plan to clear other encampments, though they have not shared a timeline for that. The city has cited safety as the reason for the closures, pointing to over 850 911 calls from the camps in the last year.
St. Paul isn't turning Pig's Eye back into an empty lot. This is a prime river adjacent property. And once it's absolutely cleared, it gets redeveloped into parkland and green space that raises property values in every house around the area and obviously makes them more taxable, makes the land more taxable on the books, all while the city keeps qualifying for the same federal homeless dollars that it already collected when the camp was still standing there. Clearing out the eyesore doesn't cost the city much money. It actually makes the city money. And that, my friends, is the entire business model here. Keep the shelters full enough that nobody can say that the system is doing nothing. Keep the camps visible enough that the federal grant money still keeps flowing in. Never actually shrink the number of people who need help, because the day that number hits zero, the funding hits zero right behind it. A shelter that solves homelessness puts itself out of a job. So it actually never solves it. It manages it forever and ever, one press conference at a time. And that's why you guys singing outside a city building bothered me more than anything else when putting this video together. Everybody in that room got up and said, the camp is a symbol of freedom, a place where people belong. Don't touch it. That's fine. That's your opinion. But then open up your own front door. Not one single testifier, one person who sang, who chanted, who hymned, who called the police armed thugs that night, offered their own guest room, offered their own basement, offered their own address, their own front yard where they can pop up their tent. Their outrage is a hard stop at their own front porch. Compassion is free when it's happening in somebody else's neighborhood.
What this government, what this system exists to do is to enforce private property. And if these people think that they can just go live in the park, no. That'll bring all our property values down. That'll collapse the whole system. So what can we do besides beg and plead, you mother, for a little bit of humanity? I think what we should do is take their ability away to brutalize us like this. I think we should take away the weapons from the armed group of thugs.
That got an applause. A guy calling for disarming police got clapped for in an actual government building. Meanwhile, a woman who sang about freedom never ever once mentioned whose guest room that freedom was going to live in tomorrow. Roughly $2,000 a person just to clear out somebody's tent with police. A city's own emergency house planning was $1 million for 50 beds. You guys can do the math yourself. That's $20,000 a bed for a temporary cot, temporary housing in a city that is at 99% capacity. That is not a housing plan, my friends. That is a press release with a price tag on it. America, they stood up in that room and sang about freedom, about belonging, about a community that nobody should be allowed to touch. Then the city that they were begging quietly filed the paperwork to turn that same ground into a park with higher tax revenue and a bill attached to it with every single house around it. Nobody singing that night is losing their guest room or their spare bedroom. The only ones losing anything are the 200 people who got walked down the street to a different patch of dirt with a different set of tents, waiting for the next city council meeting and the next song. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.